I would like to call to order the September 18th, 2023 Cabarrus County Board of Commissioners regular meeting. Welcome. It's good to see everyone tonight. If you would please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, and if you would join me, please, in a moment of silence for our invocation tonight. Thank you. Okay, first up is the approval of the meeting agenda, and you all have a copy of that before you. Do I hear a motion to approve the agenda as presented?
Motion to approve. Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. All opposed, no. That motion passes. And we move now to recognitions and presentations. I did want to mention that Commissioner Workman will not be with us tonight. He had some family matters that he had to attend to. Also, we have our new members of the Youth Commission with us tonight. We're delighted to have them here. We had a chance to attend just a little bit of their meeting before I came here tonight, and was very impressed that such a large number of them were willing to take leadership roles in that organization. I think they were conducting election for officers when I had to step out. But if you would please stand so we can recognize you and welcome you. We appreciate your service on the Youth Commission and look forward to having some of you rotating throughout the year to be with us up here during our meetings. First up is a proclamation for Hispanic and Latino Heritage Month. We are happy to have Sandra Torres with us tonight from La Puente, Hispania. And I told her I would read the proclamation for her tonight. So, Hispanic and Latino Heritage Month Proclamation. Whereas Cabarrus County is proud to be home to over 27,000 community members of Hispanic or Latino descent, and whereas Hispanic and Latino community members enrich our communities by sharing their vibrant culture and heritage, and whereas in September 1968, Congress authorized President Lyndon B. Johnson to proclaim National Hispanic Heritage Week, and whereas this celebration was expanded by President Ronald Reagan in 1988 to cover a 30-day period starting on September 15th and ending on October 15th, and whereas the United States Congress and the White House call for all Americans to observe this month appropriately, whereas Cabarrus County will join with the rest of the country in recognizing the National Hispanic and Latino Heritage Month by commemorating essential contributions, sacrifices, and accomplishments that Hispanic and Latino people have made to the United States throughout history. Now therefore be it proclaimed, the Cabarrus Board of Commissioners do hereby recognize September 15th through October 15th as Hispanic and Latino Heritage Month. Commissioners, you've heard the proclamation. Do I hear a motion that it be adopted as presented?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. All opposed, no. That motion passes unanimously. I will mention that it was my honor to attend the El Grito celebration that was held here in Cabarrus County yesterday, which is the Mexican Independence Day celebration. Was happy to be on stage with Miguel Antonio Suesta Zarco, who is the Deputy Consul General of Mexico, who was here in Cabarrus County for that occasion. So we had a little bit of rain yesterday afternoon, but it did not dampen the spirits of them. There was a huge crowd of folks that were out there celebrating El Grito. So I was happy to be a part of that. So we move now to informal public comments. Thank you. I think a round of applause is appropriate. Okay, as we move to informal public comments, I think I have 4 cards tonight. Each person, if you would state your name and address when you come to the podium and speak into the microphone because you are being televised, and you have three minutes to speak. First is Ray Helms.
Good evening. I want to read something from the strategic plan for Cabarrus County on page 6, goal 2, and I'm going to read 2 of the objectives. It says, develop a land acquisition plan and determine priorities within that plan. Objective 4 was establish a reliable, sustainable funding plan for maintenance and expansion of facilities. So I went out to Rob Wallace Park and looked at the memorial out there for veterans. Now, granted, the memorial itself is very nice, but that's about it. It's over 1,000 foot for them to get there, and they got to meander around on gravel, come up over a wooden bridge, around gravel again, and there's nothing out there other than just that memorial. There's no shelter, hardly any seating. And then I got to looking around at some of the plants, some of the screening plants. A lot of them are dying. Some have already died. They've been cut down, not replaced. And I think that's just tragic, that there's no maintenance there. Then walking around the lake, I asked the guy there, you got some nice people out there, by the way. I just want to mention that. They're very, very nice. And so I asked him about the way the pond is kept up. I said, it looks awful snaky to me. I mean, it's just growed up. So I was going to fly my drone over there and take pictures, but they wouldn't let me do that. Said, you've got an ordinance against that. So I'm going to see, hopefully y'all will help me with that I can do that for that particular reason. I'll try to go out there where I don't invade any of the animals' privacy. Then I saw the boardwalk replacement at Vietnam Veterans Park. It's been done once before, and it didn't hold up. So let me just read it right quick. It said the current boardwalk on Vietnam Veteran Park that intersects with the man-made pond and wetlands has been replaced already once and since the inception of the park and required significant structural repairs in fiscal year 2023. Said engineering is required to either find a better approach for foundations that will not, deteriorate, and other types of boardwalks which should be constructed. So that goes back to planning. And the same planning at Rob Wallace Park was very limited. I think our veterans deserve a lot more. Y'all are spending $27 million on a library in Afton Village. I got no problem with that, not against it, but I think we could spend a little bit of money for our veterans. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, our next speaker is Jerry Anderson.
Jerry Anderson, Kannapolis, North Carolina. Yeah, the veterans, y'all stuck a knife in my back and the scab's still there. I come to ask for help for my helpless federal child, 25 years old. If she was a competent adult, they should have told me at the time. They should have said she needs to come get help. But no, they took my offer. I asked them to help me and they said they would. You know, it turned into an investigation. I never understood how investigation turned from somebody asking to help them. But the investigation went on through February, and they said everything's fine, and your granddaughter's good if she stays at your house. And it was abrupt ending. She gave me a form y'all said don't exist. So, you know, y'all file those files in your vault. You'll never know. But anyway, the two girls that come at the end of that investigation, two black ladies, Delisha Vanderpool, Deshandra Christian, they were awful to my daughter, and I didn't like them. And so when I went back to see if I could get more help for my daughter, or if I was going to have to take her somewhere else, I called up there and I asked for Jessica Bridges. That's all I would talk to. And they said, she's here, come on up here. I went up there and they lied. That was the first lie. And then after that, they started a case and they hurt my daughter so bad she had to go to the hospital. And while she was at the hospital, they kept calling me and saying, where's your daughter? I said, she's at the hospital. I'm at the hospital right now with my sister, and I can't hear over these machines. Call me later. You know, she's at the hospital. They called me 2 days later, the same time that my sister was getting help up there. Where's Erica? She's at the hospital getting treatment. They beat her, you know, where she had to go get treatment. Anyway, listen, they come on Saturday night after that and took my daughter with the police. Now, my daughter, think about this, has been in school in Cabarrus County at Jackson Park School every day. Every day that teacher saw her. That teacher knew that I come up there with my daughter and enrolled her in that school. And that teacher up there knew that I went up there when they talked about grades with my granddaughter. And I had the dojo. And they conferred to me. But these two ladies, one's in Facebook right now saying, because I have a black son, because I had a black daughter, she took her, didn't want the white people to raise her, and didn't offer to the family because my family was white. Think about it, been in school every day and get taken.
Our next card is from Jeter Anderson.
Take the knife out of my back. I'm sorry.
Jeter Anderson. I asked Mike Downs a question up here last time I was up here. I asked him if he changed the diagnosis on my sister, and no answer seems like an answer to me. So I'm guessing you did. I'm guessing you changed the diagnosis on my sister to fraudulently take that child and commit this fraud. But apart from what the veteran's saying, April 9th, 2016, I got part out on video, and I showed Mike Downs, but he didn't. Maybe my phone was this is a new phone. I don't know if he was squirming. He wasn't trying to listen. I'd like you to listen to it, if you would, if I can.
What you're saying until they're done. Yes, sir. You understand that?
Yes, sir.
You're saying you don't want your daughter.
It's the video.
Don't treat me like
Yes,
I'm
sir.
a brand new officer, all
Yes,
right?
sir.
Yes, you are. You're being
No, sir.
rude and disrespectful.
No, he's not. No, sir.
Taking my daughter.
You're taking my daughter.
She's trying to explain.
No clothes, no
She's trying to
nothing. Is
explain.
that how you want her to leave out?
I want to repeat that. I won't play that again.
No, sir.
My daughter.
Absolutely.
And his unprofessional Department of DSS agrees, yes, we're taking your daughter. Never does this man go to court. Never does anybody get arrested. They just come in our home and took that child and covered it up. And to do this to a veteran, man, you must really hate veterans. I mean, we see the park, we hear about what's going on in the park, and this family you stepped on. What about the next helpless child in Cabarrus? What are we going to do with them? Treat them like a competent adult too? I had questions to ask this man. I had come to his office and he shut the door rudely. I did nothing wrong but ask questions. I lost 2 individuals. One was supposed to be taken care of and looked after. No, she was neglected, abused, and exploited. And y'all are okay with exploitation. I asked Evan Lee about it. He's seen it numerous times. He was a DSS lawyer, so he's okay with exploitation. Are y'all? I have questions, man. I have questions to this day. It's not going away. My love for you is growing stronger. I think this veteran needs help to this day. Your department fraudulently took this child and hurt somebody, man. Why wasn't nobody arrested? She was competent adult, right? Shouldn't somebody been arrested? This child never seen her family again. We raised her from a little baby. We loved her. I love her to this day. You could have took my arms and legs, man. You didn't have to take the child. Didn't have to do that to us. Now, I sit here every day and have to wonder and pray and think about her, and I get no answers. Your nasty department still, and I'm sorry to call them nasty. You know, I know your department's great. When they help, they're really great, and that's what hurts, because I know how great your department could be. And I don't know how they just missed her. They just cut her out like that, and yeah, that hurts, man.
Okay, our next card is from Bishop Roland Jordan.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman. To each and one of y'all, to the community, Mr. Downing, lawyer, friend. This is hate season, and you proved it to me today in court, praise God. Before I get to that, I want you to know that I see why Brother Ronald Long don't get the proclamation, because he's black and he's hated by white people. And I see why come we ain't got our bridge done on Concord on Lincoln Street. It's because we black people are poor. Not all of us poor though, but it's y'all who hold accountable. You know, every one of y'all, praise God. But social service, I'm not gonna hold that on y'all, but I'm gonna hold that on social service. You got some liars in there. And I proved that in court today with decimation. My lady friend, 9 months, I was with her. It didn't matter whether she's the mother or not. I know that she was a lady to run around in the streets, and I was a homeowner, but God changed my life. I do have a spare tire. My grandmama told me about that, about women's. I know you got kids in here, but I won't let you know, praise God. It's wartime with the Lord, and y'all people, DSS, for doing my people wrong. Yeah, I thought the brothers and them might have been lying, but I see they was telling the truth. Praise God. Do you really care about taking people's kids? You know, I'm not gonna see you take Miss Samantha kid. I'm gonna fight you with all I got. Praise God. May heaven smile on you and bless you in peace. I got another meeting to go to. I'm not rushing off. I'm not afraid of you. Bless you.
Okay, that concludes our informal public comments. And we move now to our consent agenda. You see, Commissioners, the items on our consent agenda, which are all items that we discussed at our work session 2 weeks ago. I think we have 14 items. Do I hear a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented? Okay, we have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye. All opposed, no. That motion passes. And we move now to new business. First item up is Stepping Up program staffing changes. We're happy to have Manager Rodney Harris to talk about that item.
Good evening. I was supposed to have backup this evening from Sheriff Shaw and Sonia Bohannon-Thacker, but I don't see them in the chamber, so I'm going to try to do the best I can with this item. It is time sensitive as they need to recruit and fill this position. As you recall, several months ago, we transitioned the Stepping Up program to the Health Alliance for administration, and so this is all the assessments of inmates as they come into the jail, making sure they're connected to mental health resources, and also doing assessments from a mental health perspective. And so over the last few months, it has been going incredibly well, but the Health Alliance is now asking to convert a half-time position to a full-time clinician because of the volume of cases. And then also, this is to address a recent change that we're expecting where Daymark is going to begin charging the sheriff's office for some of these assessments. And we think it's more appropriate to go ahead and just add this resource to the Health Alliance contract rather than pay Daymark. So there is no budget action needed in the current year, but if you approve this item, we will add it to the FY25 budget so that it is there moving forward. And I can answer any questions that you have.
Okay, questions for Mr. Harris?
The money that we're paying Daymark, would it be like a wash with this that?
So we are not currently paying Daymark. They've been doing it without payment.
Oh, I see. But
And
they're
so
gonna-
they're going to start charging, but there will be a corresponding reduction to the jail behavioral health contract. It's Dr. Coy is the one that does some assessments.
Right.
They will reduce that contract
So this
to offset this
this
cost.
will potentially save us money. Would that be?
It probably won't save money, but it will not be a full cost because we'll be able to reallocate some dollars from other contracts.
Okay.
Okay, other questions? I don't really have a question, but a comment. I think the Stepping Up program has been incredibly important and I think successful in what we, as just one of the items that we have tried to implement to deal with behavioral health issues in the county. I have heard the sheriff say, and I've heard others, law enforcement as well, that our detention facility here in Cabarrus County is the largest behavioral health facility anywhere around. That's such a large percentage of folks that go through the detention facility do have some sort of mental health or behavioral health issue. And so to have these assets available there, I think is extremely valuable. I think that the recent changes are good ones that help to provide that service. And I look at these steps as, yes, there are costs associated with that, but I think that I look at it as an investment more than a cost, because I feel like the funds that we invest in trying to address behavioral health issues with some of these, particularly repeat offenders, people that we see repeatedly visiting our detention facility. Hopefully, this Stepping Up program is an intervention that will stop that flow, that will enable this person to get the help that they need so that we don't see them continually coming back to the facility. And I know that was certainly one of the goals that we talked about when we implemented this program about 5 years ago, I think. So hopefully we're seeing some return on that because it is an extremely expensive proposition to house people in that detention facility. So I'm very much in favor of it. That being said, if there are no more questions, do I hear a motion to approve additional staffing for the Stepping Up program provided by the Cabarrus Health Alliance?
I'll move for approval, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Is there any other discussion? Okay, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. All opposed, no. That motion passes. And we move to item 2, Community Transportation Grant, public hearing. This is the fiscal year 25 5311 grant. Mr. Bushy, did you have anything that you would like to share before we open that public hearing? I think these are funds that come down from, are they all state and federal funds?
This is state funds allocated to cover the cost of administrative cost as well as capital replacement vehicles.
And this is something that typically comes down on an annual basis, right?
Annual grant, yes.
Right, okay. All right, and we have advertised a public hearing as is required in order to meet the obligations of this grant. So at this time, I will open the public hearing regarding our 5311 grant for transportation and invite anyone to the podium that would like to speak on this matter. Okay, seeing no one, I will close the public hearing. Commissioners, do I hear a motion to approve this application? Okay, we have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? And just for the specific wording on that, I think that's to accept the fiscal year 24 5311 Community Transportation Grant and adopt the accompanying resolution. Okay, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. All opposed, no. That motion passes. And we move to item 3. And we are happy to have our tax administrator, David Thrift, with us to talk about the schedule of values for upcoming revaluation.
Thank you. Just want to say briefly, for those that didn't see our work session, the schedule of values is effectively our appraisal manual for the 2024 revaluation. It contains all of our rates, our adjustments, our modeling, and our statistical analysis that we use to produce market value for our revaluation. This process of adoption started at the work session when I presented that schedule of values. It's now available and open to the public for review. Tonight we'll have a public hearing. The plan then would be for, at your next work session, I'll ask you to adopt that schedule. And that process of adoption, once you adopt it, opens a 30-day period in which that can be challenged to the Property Tax Commission. And if there's no challenge and that becomes final, that would be November 1st. So tonight would just be the public hearing if anybody has anything to say regarding the schedule.
Okay, anybody have questions for Mr. Thrift? I think, and if I interpreted, the schedule of values is the document that if anybody in the county wanted to know how the revaluation came up with a figure for their property or their residence or both, the formulas, the criteria, everything that's used to make that determination is included in this schedule of values, right?
That's correct, sir.
Yeah, okay, great.
I do have a question for
Yes,
you.
sir.
And this is just related to property taxes. Whenever we're looking at the budget and we have, the revenues coming in from property taxes, how much of that would you say is personal property versus real estate?
So our
Percentages. I mean, it don't have to be.
percentages probably, with 4 categories of revenue from property tax. The major one is real estate. That's probably 85–90% of the valuation.
Right.
We have personal property, which is, we consider from business personal property and individual personal property that's not motor vehicle. The third category is registered motor vehicles.
Right.
And the fourth category is public service, which is utility companies, those types of companies that span across multiple jurisdictions. The Department of Revenue actually evaluates those and provides those valuations for us, and then we bill from there. So,
Okay.
and that's a very small portion of those.
Okay. So obviously, I figured real estate was the
Real estate
majority
is
of
the
it, but-
primary.
Okay. All right. And I know we had discussed this at the work session. I guess you still do not have any preliminary numbers, any management? Nobody has preliminary numbers that could share about reevaluation? Okay. All right. Well, I know Chairman Morris had mentioned in the work session that, he felt like property values maybe 30–40% or 30 to 35% increase.
That is a wildly
Right.
unscientific guess, but
But
yes,
we
you're
all-
correct,
right.
yes.
But we all are anticipating property values to increase, so, so I certainly, don't argue that point. As more people have moved into the area, it's created more of a demand for property and homes and things of that nature. So I certainly understand that the values are going to increase. But, you know, we're just kind of getting into this process where, and I want to say all this for the benefit of the public, so everyone's aware. I know you know this for sure, so I'm not asking you. I just want to make a statement that we're getting into this process, and that, you know, if we're looking now at property value increases between 30 to 40%, each of the taxpayers need to look at their property tax bill, and the portion that's going to the county needs to realize that potentially that could increase 30 to 40%. Now, if this board decides not to go in that direction and to go into a revenue neutral tax rate, that would not be the case. And we would have the opportunity to bring our property tax rate down from 74 cent to, you know, low 50s, mid 50s. And so I want the public to be aware of this, that these discussions are coming, and that if we do not go in the direction of a revenue neutral tax rate, then, you know, you're looking at obviously higher tax bills for the home, for the taxpayer. They could potentially increase rent cost. We've heard a lot about that this year, about you know, the rent programs. And, you know, as an apartment owner or a rental house owner, if you're having to pay more in property tax, inevitably they're going to increase the rent and pass that on to a tenant. And the way, you know, we have seen the real estate market starting to cool off, or has cooled off, you know, I think it's very important for all of us to realize that, you know, we need to show some relief to the taxpayer and realize that we can drop our tax rate at that time to more reflect on the community and reflect, you know, what people can afford, because I think there's some tough situations out there with seniors and veterans and you know, people paying rent. And if we do not go with a revenue neutral tax rate, we're going to have some people that are even in more dire situations. So that was on my mind. Like I said, I want to put that out there so the public's aware that this is coming. You know, this will be, you know, we'll get into more of these discussions probably at the beginning of next year, but just want to make sure everyone's aware that this is coming, and just be aware.
I will say, just for clarification, any increase or change in a person's or property owner's assessment is not necessarily going to be exactly at the change in the total tax base. So if we're talking about a 30 to 40% number and moving to a revenue neutral tax rate, that doesn't mean that's going to be the exact same effect for each individual taxpayer. So that could be certainly vary depending on the person's assessment. So just, and certainly we'll get into more of that as we go into.
So that goes back to what I'd asked in the work session, if there was areas of the county that were going to increase more than others. And so it sounds like that may be the case. And so I understand each individual, you know, you're somebody in a certain area of the county that where there's more demand, their value could go up more than somewhere that's in the rural area. So yes, revenue neutral for the individual may not mean exactly the same, but as a countywide, you know, revenues coming in, you know, I would like for us to see a revenue neutral tax rate.
I think just to further expand on that a little bit, I don't think, and correct me if I'm wrong, but my interpretation was that not so much difference in values based on geographic locations in the county, but likely the classifications, the categories. For example, business property may not escalate as much as residential property. And you said the real estate market had cooled off. I don't think it's cooled off too much based on the buyers that I'm hearing from that are looking for homes, that are having difficulty getting contracts. There are still situations where people are paying over asking price. So if the business valuation goes up 20% and the residential valuation goes up 40%, and you adopt a revenue neutral tax rate, then residential taxpayers' taxes will increase. So in order to avoid that, you would have to adopt a rate less than revenue neutral, which means that the residential taxes would remain the same, and then taxes would go down on all the business, which is a pretty, I'm not going to ask you to guess at percentages, because I know you don't like to do that, and I certainly understand. But that would result in it would not be revenue neutral for the county. But the other thing that I wanted to mention, and correct me if I'm wrong again, if I remember from our work session, just so the public knows the process, this sets the methodology of how you determine the value for businesses, for individuals, for real estate, everything that we collect property taxes on. So this public hearing that we're getting ready to open gives anybody an opportunity to express, if they've read that, and I'm going to be totally honest with you, I have not. I mean, I read a lot of it, but I haven't read it all. How many pages? 200?
Over 300.
300 pages of all the process that they go to, and so this is the opportunity for people to express any concerns that they might have with that. You know, if they look at that document and they say, I don't think this is the right way to value this, this is their opportunity to have some input on that. And then if that is adopted at our work session, which would be the first Monday in October, after we have this public hearing, then your folks will go about using those formulas and that information to determine what the valuation will be. That's when those guesses that we were making, we'll find out whether they were accurate or not. And then the notice of that revaluation will go out to every taxpayer in the county somewhere around the 1st of February.
That's correct.
And so that would be the time that if you got notification that your property had increased by 50% or whatever, and you thought that was not correct, that you could not actually sell your property for that amount, then that would be the time to go in and file an appeal on that. And there is a process of several different steps that you can go through. Then there would be a conclusion reached on that. It could be at the local level, and there's a series of appeals. It could go to the Property Tax Commission subsequently, but there is a whole process there. And then once that is settled, then that's when the Board of Commissioners talks about setting tax rates during our budget process.
Right.
And once that has been voted on and approved, then those tax bills will go out usually
Towards
1st of July?
End of July, first part of August.
End of July. And so what I have noticed in the past is a lot of people get their revaluation notice and they don't say anything about it, and they wait until they get their property tax bill at the end of July, and then they say, well, I don't think my valuation is correct. And the reason I say all this is because it's too late then.
Right.
Yeah, so I would say that to the public, anybody that, of course, we'll say it again, because February is a ways off, but that's the time to express concern if you think anything is inaccurate, while you still have that appeal time available to you. The other thing that I would mention, and we can certainly talk about this more, is, and you and I've talked about it, I've asked you some questions about it. It is my understanding that we have 3 different programs available to assist any citizen in Cabarrus County that has difficulty paying their property taxes. One of them is specifically directed towards veterans if I remember correctly.
Yes, sir.
There are some
Disabled.
income requirements.
Disabled veterans.
Disabled veterans, okay. If it's a disabled veteran, and they have an income level that falls within that level, then they can receive a discounted rate on their property taxes. Is that correct?
That's correct. They get an exclusion of part of their property tax.
Right. And then we have the same sort of a program for seniors.
That's correct.
As well. And that also has some income qualifications. They can also receive that exclusion. And then there is a third category, which is a deferment program.
That's
If
correct.
somebody cannot afford to pay their property taxes, then those property taxes can be deferred, and they don't pay any taxes at all until they sell their property. Is that correct?
So there's an income requirement there
Requirement
as
on
well.
that.
And it establishes a cap on the amount of property taxes based on a percentage of your income. And that's,
Of the
the rest is
income.
then deferred.
Okay,
That's correct.
right. And if I remember correctly, the last time I asked you about that, I think you told me that there was one person in the county that took advantage
That's correct.
of that program. So, the question is, why? Is it because people don't qualify? Is it because we don't talk about it enough and people are not aware of it? And that's one reason that I'm talking about it right now.
Sure.
If there are people that have financial difficulty, and particularly in relation to their property taxes, we've got 3 different programs that they can check out. So, probably we'll repeat that more also because, that's the reason we have those programs, is to help people.
Yes.
And if they don't know about it, then that undoubtedly is the reason they're not using it. But I was very surprised that on that deferment program, that there was only one person in a county of 240,000 people that was using that. So I'll probably ask you these questions a couple of more times.
Please do. It's good information. And if anybody has questions, those are complex, and we're available to answer questions and talk to folks if they want to look at the different options that are available at any time.
Right.
I will also say, to your earlier point, this is the public opportunity to speak on that schedule of values, but we're available for questions and to hear comments at any point. If anybody has and wants to speak to us, we can do that outside of a public hearing. So,
Okay, great. And before we open the public hearing, this schedule of values, people can access that in which ways to study
we've got the physical copy in our office, but it's also available on the website.
Okay.
If you go to the county website and search schedule of values, it comes to a page. You can access all of it right there.
Yeah, so all 300 pages you can pull up online and
Good reading, yes.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Does anybody else have any other questions or comments? If not, thank you.
Thank you.
And at this time, we will open the public hearing for the schedule of values. I think this has been advertised in the newspaper and otherwise, and we talked about it at our work session. So anybody step to the podium that's willing to speak on this? Yes, sir.
Well, I'm not wanting to speak about that particular, but I do want to thank you for mentioning that. I've looked at videos of commission meetings all the way back to 2010. Similar things, what we're going through right now, they were going through then. Never once people heard that explanation, but I would suggest that in the tax bill, you put that in there. And I think then they wouldn't have no excuse. I think it's a good program that you've got. I didn't even know about it till about a year ago. So I thank you for mentioning it tonight. But I do want to be realistic about things, about taxes. I also looked at what you were talking about, tax revenue neutral. Heard that all the way back then. Matter of fact, one that got appointed as a commissioner, he was all for tax revenue neutral. Then when he got on the board, he was against it. So there's pros and cons for everything, but I think we just need to be honest with people. Taxes are not going down. That's just not possible. with the increase of what things cost and the demands on this county of what they need to provide for people, there's no way you can reduce costs. If we can maintain, that would be a good thing, but reducing is pretty much out of the question, and we just need to be upfront about it. It's not a popular thing to say or even hear, because people are looking for reduction. But if you tell them that and you don't come through with it, that's even worse. I think we just need to be honest and just say, we're going to work hard to keep it where it's at and still provide the services. Because I'm telling you, if you don't and it goes down, the revenue goes down and something's going to get cut. And then you know what's going to happen then. So I thank you for doing that tonight. I even thank you, Chris, for mentioning those things. I think people need to understand what those things mean. They just hear the terms, but they do not know what they mean. I was one that didn't have no idea what it meant, but I kept hearing it. Then I found out. So I think by the tax incentives that we do to get new business in, with the revenue we get from them, helps keep the tax rate low. I understand that part. And I think that's where we need to concentrate on keeping businesses coming in rather than trying to get homes in here, because then that's demand on the infrastructure that we just can't provide for right now, from what I see. So I feel for you. I know you're up against a wall, but I just think we just need to be straight up honest with people about the taxes. Thank you.
Great. Okay, is there anybody else that would like to speak regarding the schedule of values for revaluation?
Good evening. My name's Josh. Normally I get up here and I have something funny to say, or, I try to joke around. Mainly I try to get Steve to crack, and sometimes I get him, sometimes I don't. But the tax revenue and the tax increase is a very serious situation, right? I put that up on par with the right to bear arms with myself. And me personally, I've been very blessed in life. I don't really have a lot of concern with any potential tax increase myself. And I cannot say that for everybody. And if there is some sort of way to remain, neutral in this coming increase, however the math works out, I think that would be very beneficial to everybody. And I'm just looking over some of these numbers in the publications. 44% revenue increase over the past 5 years off of property taxes from the previous budget, right? And with that 44% increase of revenue, we still find ourselves not able to pay for the things that we need and want, and that the county feels as though it should provide to the people. Now, I'm all for services being provided by the government. I cannot say that the government has a great track record of providing those services in a cost savings way, right? I think that everybody would agree with that. And it's just the nature of the beast. The bureaucracy grows, the red tape grows, and the more that grows, the more people you got to hire on to maintain it, and the more people, and so on and so forth. But with everybody coming in, any type of tax increase on these, fixed income individuals and things of this nature, it could really, really hinder them. And I just really want you to take time out, pray on it before y'all make your decisions. I think that Mr. Helms is correct. There's really no way around a tax increase, but just take a moment and really think about what you may potentially be doing to people before we set that level, right? That's all I ask. God bless you.
Thank you. Is there anybody else that would like to speak on the schedule of values? Okay, seeing no one, I will close the public hearing. This, as we explained earlier, does not require a vote tonight. That will come at our work session, which will be the first Monday in October. As Mr. Thrift mentioned, the Tax Administration Office is available to answer any questions that anybody might have if you go back and and look at it and have some item that you'd like to question, there are people willing and able to sit down with you and answer those questions. And this information, as we mentioned before, hard copies are available here at the Governmental Center, and there are copies of all that information online on the website.
There is one thing I would like to clarify from some of those comments. Whenever we discuss revenue neutral tax rate, yes, if our values go up, then that means the rate can come down. So that does not mean that we're cutting services, does not mean that we're cutting any sort of programs or anything of that nature. If it's revenue neutral, that means that the Cabarrus County government will receive the same revenue as the previous years. Yes, the rate could go from 74 to, like I said, it could be low 50s, mid 50s. With the rate going down, that does not mean that we are cutting anything or reducing contributions to any departments or anything of that nature. Revenue neutral means that we are bringing in, the Cabarrus County government will receive the same revenue as they received the year before. So I just wanted to clarify that.
Okay, we move now to reports. So at this time, we'll receive updates from commission members who serve as liaisons to municipalities or on various boards and/or committees. Does anybody have anything?
Yeah. I've mentioned this once earlier this year, but I want to mention it again as it approaches. The town of Harrisburg is celebrating their 50th year of incorporation. And so if you go to their website, their social media posts, they have a schedule of certain events that they're going to be having through now between the end of the year. And so I would encourage everyone to take a look at that. They're very excited about this 50th year celebration, and there's a lot of activities, concerts, things of that nature that I feel like the public would enjoy attending. So.
Thank you.
Morris, I'd also like to address what you mentioned earlier about the Youth Commission. You know, I attended their meeting, and like you, I was impressed with the number of kids that were involved, but more importantly, probably 90% of them wanted to sign up for leadership positions, and to me, that is kind of unheard of, and so we got something to be proud of and look forward to. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Okay, Commissioner Wortman asked me if I would make some announcements on his behalf for the Active Living and Parks that he is the liaison to. On those items at Rob Wallace Park, construction has started on the new shelter, restroom, and playground area. For any of you that go there, you may have seen that. Renovations are underway on the swimming pool at Camp Spencer Park. There were some issues with that. I think that they had to close this summer, so they're already working on that. They have the Touch a Truck event coming up on October the 28th from 9 o'clock to 1 o'clock at the Cabarrus Arena and Events Center. If any of you have, well, I find it enjoyable myself, but my grandson was crazy about it when he went out there. He got to see fire trucks and police vehicles and all the utility vehicles, and they have quite a large assortment of trucks that kids can see, and adults as well. So that is October the 28th. That I would encourage you to participate in that. Also on October 28th, beginning at 5:30 p.m. at Frank Lisk Park, is the Jack-o'-lantern 5K road race. So I think they're taking applications for people to participate in that. So as you can tell, Parks and Active Living are staying very, very busy. A lot of things to offer the people of Cabarrus County. And so if there are no other, then we will move now to general comments by board members, if anybody has anything.
Mr. Chairman, I wanted to make a few comments, if I could, in reference to the revenue neutral that Commissioner Meesemer was talks about. You know, you're passionate about that, and I totally understand it. And then, of course, we had Josh, you spoke about it as well, and Mr. Hams as well. But what I want to say is, this would be a pretty easy decision, except for one issue that we're going to have to deal with. And that is, the general public don't know this, I don't think, but the school system is asking us to build, in the next 10 years, 3 more high schools and 4 elementary schools. And there's a possibility we may have to build a middle school. Now, I served on the school board, as all of you know, for 12 years. And I remember where we were, and I know where we are now. And where we were paying, and I thought, Lord, how can we do that? $55 million for a high school. Well, the last high school we built out there on Weddington was West Cabarrus High School, 1,800 students. I think we ended up spending $75–80 million on that school. Well, now, and County Manager Downs can chirp in, or Chairman Morris, either one, or other commissioners, now, or even Rodney, you know, we're having to put in, estimate $160 million for a high school. 3 times what we were paying. And so when you look at that, it's close, the schools and all that, you're looking at close to $1 billion. Not a M, but a B, with a B, $1 billion. Now, the next question is, where does that revenue come from? If you do a revenue neutral, then how do we build these schools? Now, the things that we've already built, the schools that we've already built, those are budgeted, and they're budgeted, and our capital improvement plan, all that stuff is set. So those bills will be paid with the revenue we got coming in. But if you do a revenue neutral, you're looking at $35–40 million extra expense to do these schools. So if you don't get the revenue to build the schools, what does that mean? That means you have to start cutting services. Nobody wants to cut services. We done been that road. We done been down that road one time before in 2014, where the community come up here and they spoke. I was here that night, and 29 people spoke that night and said, do not cut the libraries. Do not cut the parks. Do not cut the senior centers. Do not this, do not that. And at the time that took place, the board then voted to take $3.9 million out of the budget and cut all of those things, the employee wellness center, the park, the Rob Wallace Park, all of that was cut out. So we're in the same situation again. Do we want to build the schools? Or what do we do with all these children that's going to be coming? Department of Public Instruction in North Carolina says that we're going to have all these kids coming. And so far to right now, they're within 200 students of where they say we would be. So you don't see them, but they're coming. And we're going to have to build the schools. And therefore, we're going to have the revenue. So the bottom line is, and Chris, you and I, we've talked about it, I don't see a revenue neutral coming, but there's going to be a lot more discussion on this. We're going to have a lot more meetings. I mean, this is something you don't do overnight. But I just wanted to take a couple of minutes and explain to the public the situation that we're in. Because you don't just reach up and pull $35 million annually out of the thin air. So you either do that, you either find a way to generate the revenue, or you don't build the schools, or you start cutting services so you can make up the money to build the schools. But anyway, I just wanted to say those few things because it's a very big issue. I'm very sensitive about it, very passionate about it. I'm a very conservative person. I don't want to spend no more money than we have to. But I think that people want their things. They want their services. And I want to do all I can to see to it that they're provided as best as I can. So, but like I said, we're going to be talking about this a whole lot more in the months to come. But I just wanted to let everybody know where I'm at. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Add something, since I am a former school board member very recently, not to mention the new schools is the reoccurring maintenance that we have to come up with because, we, as most people don't realize it, but a lot of our schools are in bad shape. They're old and in bad shape. And, I sent pictures to the superintendent this past week of some ceiling tiles that were leaking water on a stove in a cooking class. The public don't know that. So we do have a lot of expenses that, not only of the people moving in where we need new schools, but we got to repair the ones we have. So I just wanted to, throw that out there with Lynn.
Great, thank you. Yeah, I certainly agree with what you're saying. I think I've been on this board for 11 years, and I think we've built a school every year. Now, we may have missed one or 2 years there, but I don't think we've closed any schools during that time. And the schools that we have built, and I use as an example West Cabarrus High School. I remember that we had extensive debate when that school was under construction because we were trying to think ahead, try to project out in the future. And so there was a portion of that school that we had a lot of discussion about. Do we go ahead and finish out that, or do we just leave that as shell space so that it'll be available when our school population increases? We can go back and then finish it out. And we finally decided, just as other things we're talking about, that if we wait to finish out that space, it's probably going to be significantly more expensive to do it later on than if we do it now while we've got the crews mobilized and on site and the plans in place. Not to mention the code changes that occur if you wait for a few years. So we decided to go ahead and finish out that school and completely finish the school. Well, I think within probably 12 months of being open, that school was filled to capacity. And we're seeing that in other schools all around the county. We've talked about some of the efforts that the school board is involved in looking at their districting plan to make sure that every facility is getting maximum utilization. I've commented before that is to the benefit of the taxpayer, and we should be supportive of that process. Although there are always going to be some folks that are unhappy if somebody has to be moved or shifted, but we're trying to look at what will give us maximum utilization of those facilities that we've got out there, and we're almost at capacity right now. And building a school is something that doesn't happen overnight. I mean, you've got to anticipate those students coming and have it ready when they get here. We can't have them go sit in the parking lot for a couple of years while we get busy and build another school. So it's a challenging opportunity. But the other thing that I've said a lot of times, and I had this very conversation, our North Carolina Association of County Commissioners had their annual conference several weeks ago, and I sat down at a table one night with the people from several other counties, and as I frequently do, just talking with them, I said, so what's the biggest challenge that you guys are having to face in your county right now? And there are a multitude of different answers to that question depending on their geography. But they in turn said, well, how about you? What's the biggest issue you guys are having to deal with? And I said, capital construction for schools. I said, we continue to build schools as rapidly as we can afford to build them, and they're full when they open. And we still have these projections of growth that is coming. That's our biggest issue. And the gentleman sitting immediately to my left said, well, you must have gotten all those students from us, because our school system had a decline in enrollment of 500 students for this past year. And I use that example in saying that counties across the state of North Carolina, and several years ago it was 80-20, and I think that probably still holds true. There are 20 counties in North Carolina that are growing rapidly, and there are 80 counties in North Carolina that are flat, or many of them are losing population. They're having to figure, and when I talk to people in those counties, they say, well, we're going to have to close some of our schools, and there's concern in the community from different folks about which ones will be closed, because obviously that's going to disadvantage one geographic area over another. And they say, and we're really worried about our hospital, because of our decline in population, our hospital has closed. And so now our EMS folks are having to transport people long distances for emergency procedures, things of that nature. So they have a whole different set of problems from the ones that we have, being a growing county. So the end of that conversation always for me is, if you're going to have to I'd rather deal with those problems of growth, than problems of shutting down or shrinking in size. So it's a complicated balancing act. If I could have things the way that I would like for them to be, I would love to have our folks come back in on some of the construction projects that we've dealt with here in the county, schools in particular, and say, well, we put this project out for bid, and it came in 25% less than what we projected. And that has not happened, and I don't think it's going to happen. And as we see costs escalate in the cost of these projects, these are not vanity projects. These are not projects that we're building because we want to build a monument to something or somebody. These are meeting the basic requirements for a sound public education that Department of Instruction and the General Assembly requires us to do. So it's a serious matter, and it comes with a lot of details to it. And as Commissioner Shue mentioned, that's something that we certainly will be deliberating on. It seems like budget season never ends. I think there's a month or two in there that once we get one budget passed, it's time to start working on the next one. So it's a very involved project, so I'm sure you'll hear more. Does anyone else have any comments that they would like to make?
I have one more comment on that topic. Why? Since I sparked a little debate or a little discussion amongst us. I didn't mention about the school system and the meeting we had because I was unaware if they wanted that to be public. But I want people to hear that and hear that request for $1 billion and let that resonate with each and every one of you, whether you're here or watching. $1 billion is a lot of money. And this is just for capital cost. Just for capital cost. This does not include the operational cost to buy buses, to pay teacher supplements, to custodial staff. There's a lot more in that $1 billion request that's going to end up turning it into more. Now, I certainly understand that there are needs from the school system, and I'm not opposed to us trying to address some of these needs. We do. We need to be strategic about it and decide what kind of route we're going to take. but a $1 billion request is very substantial whenever our budget's only a little over $300 million. I mean, asking for $1 billion, that will put a strain. There was discussions about there being a bond on that. I would like to see the public take a vote on that. Let them have some buy-in and some decision on that before we just assume that responsibility, or a combination of both. But, if we don't, it's easy for us to say, that there's this huge demand coming, and it has been here. We've all seen it. The growth in Cabarrus County is, been extremely substantial, but maybe we're seeing that a lot of this growth is not paying for itself. I'm happy that Eli Lilly, has moved into Cabarrus County, great company to come in and provide jobs, but when they're only paying $6 million over 10 years, $6 million over 10 years, that's a drop in the bucket to a $1 billion request we have. So, like I said, that maybe we're seeing that some of this growth and development is not paying for itself. And there's a lot that goes into that. But as I'm sitting here and I'm thinking about the taxpayer, whenever I think about an individual, an average home that's, let's say $300,000 a year, if you have a retired individual, veteran, or a family that, is just getting by, and if we do not go revenue neutral, or, some sort of compromise on some of that, I mean, folks can end up owing hundreds, if not more than $1,000 a year in taxes, just because of the decision that we make. And I cannot sit here and take a vote to put that burden on some of these folks that are in this situation. Things are getting more expensive. It's tough to make ends meet. And anyway, we have a lot of discussions about this coming up. But I'm happy that we all gave our opinion here. This is exactly what I wanted, for everyone to be aware that this is coming. This is coming, and I didn't want it to be a last minute, or appear to be a last-minute decision. I want the public to be aware and engaged in this, and so everyone is aware of what's going on, so then we can make the best decision.
Well, you have 9 or 10 more months to talk about it, so 20 more meetings.
You are going to enjoy that, I can assure you.
Absolutely. Okay, are there any other general comments by board members? Yes, sir.
Just to say one more thing about it, I think the $1 billion is probably over an 8-year period, from my mistake. I mean, it's not like an instant billion, so, which is still a lot of money.
Which is still about, more than probably 2/3 of our budget each of those years, so.
Okay, any other comments? If not, we do have need for a closed session tonight. So at this time, I would make a motion to go into closed session as authorized by North Carolina General Statute 143-318.11A1, 3, and 6 to discuss confidential information, pending litigation, and personnel matters. Okay, I made a motion, and I'll take that as a second. Is there any discussion? Okay, all in favor, please say aye. All opposed, no. We are now in closed session. Thank you all for joining us in person, as well as those folks watching us online and on Channel 22.